and the Assless Chaps Marauders.
Wes wears assless chaps, and I can't help but laugh every time he runs off and they just flap up, and then it's just cheeks.
You just got man ass, yeah.
It's just hilarious.
There's also a lot of, like, nudity.
At this scene, the truck is driving by, and the Marauders start chasing them. I don't know if it's the truck or one of the cars, but something catches on a tent and does, like, a comedic slapsticky rip away, and there's a couple having sex. So, again, more, like, just risque stuff for the viewer to just feast their eyes on.
Still got some boobies showing. Not a problem.
Bienvenido, everybody. Welcome back to another podcast of Just Play It. And welcome back on the road. It's a familiar sight. I am your host, James, and that is
Nick,
my co-pilot. Nick, where did we start our podcast journey?
We started this podcast with the original Mad Max.
We kicked off this adventure on the road with the OG Mad Max. Now, I feel like we just need to watch all the Mad Max movies this calendar year. What do you say?
Up to you, buddy. You know I'm down.
Okay, well, I'm in the driver's seat. Nick is riding shotgun. And we are diving into Mad Max 2, The Road Warrior. Mel Gibson is back, and he's still mad.
And I think he's going to stay mad. Nothing in this film was there to calm him down. I'll tell you that much.
So this is another George Miller production. Same director as the first, and like we stated before, he has directed all of the Mad Max movies. We got a couple new faces. Bruce Spence, Michael Preston, and Vernon Wells also star alongside Mel in this high-octane sequel. And once again, this movie had a very humble, modest budget of $3 million and went on to gross $23 million. That's some profits right there. Not bad.
Not bad at all. And from what I could tell, gosh, I really don't know too much about this. I was trying to look into it, but I think most of these, at least the first two Mad Max movies, I think were released mostly in Australia.
And it's crazy. Looking at our chart here, the budget of the OG Mad Max is $300,000. And then it went on to gross $8 million. This one has a $3 million budget, basically quadruples its budget with $23 million. Way to go.
Balling on a budget.
Balling on a budget. Something that Pluto Nash did not do. I'm gonna just go ahead and read this log line, Nick. I think we need to just get this journey started.
Let's do it.
In the post-apocalyptic Australian wasteland, a cynical drifter agrees to help a small, gasoline-rich community escape a horde of bandits. It's a simple plot.
Just straight shooting.
All right, so I think we need to jump into some plot talk. What do you think?
It's time for some plot talk, baby.
Plot talk. So we see a montage of what the world was, and there is some sort of narration over this. It's a little bit of a recap from the first movie. There's also it looked like it was real footage of World War II.
It was definitely from some old newsreels, kind of black and white, grainy footage.
Explaining the downfall of humanity, and it was just a collapse on a worldwide scale, and we're just in a wasteland. And this narration is explaining this to the viewer.
My life fades. The vision dims. All that remains are memories.
This whole movie is going to be loosely in this POV of this narrator character who doesn't show up throughout the movie. He really is just there in the beginning, and then he kind of wraps it up in the end. But he's recalling a story of something that he can't forget, which is the Road Warrior.
But most of all, I remember the Road Warrior, the man we called Max.
And he is explaining his little vignette of his experience with Max, how he kind of stumbled into this story, and explains that he wandered out into the wasteland after he lost everything. We get footage of dead Sprague back in the street, back on the highway, Toe Cutter's gang. There's flashback footage of Jesse and Sprague getting run down. There's a little bit of their sentimental moments, and this narrator's explaining Max came from a nice life. He's a shell of a man now. And he says something interesting. He says he wanders out into the wasteland where he learned to live again. So that's insinuating that Max feels alive out here, or the only way he can go on is to just be this road warrior, be this traveler, be this drifter, someone without a home, and just kick ass and take names.
It is kind of the second story of Max, right? So the Max is the rebirth. So in the first Mad Max, if you remember, it was all about him not wanting to be part of the road, right? He's like, that damn road, I want to get off that road, because he was a cop. And then his wife dies, his kid dies, his best friend dies. And in the end, he becomes one with the road. And this, now it sounds like this is our journey to find out this new life Max has basically built for himself as the road warrior. A lot of roads.
Yeah, the last shot is him driving on the highway in that V8 Interceptor, just thinking like, this is me, baby. I'm part of the road now. And we smack dab into an intense car chase. Do you have something to add?
I was just going to say, just something to remember, something that I really like. This is just 2 years after the original. You know, like in today's world, we have to sit and wait for a sequel to come out, like 5 years.
I think the last time we were debating if George Miller had the sequels kind of queued up because they were so different. So maybe he did. Maybe he knew he was going to go off the rails on the second one if the first one had a good return. So shout out Jim Goose, because he is one of our fallen comrades from the first movie.
Love you, Goose.
My favorite character. So yeah, we jump straight into a car chase scene with Max and what will be the main adversarial group that he combats in this movie, which is once again this rogue group of bandits and hooligans and lowlifes who wear leather, ride motorcycles. Some of them are in cars now. They did upgrade the bad guys. Some of them got 4 wheels.
Yeah, these kind of almost like sand rails, dune buggies. There's just a lot of different vehicles running around.
I think it's just kind of insinuated that they are raiders. They're just raiders. They're just trying to get gas and kill whoever they can.
Yeah, raiders, marauders, kind of that.
Yep.
They don't really have much motivation other than survival, and you might have some supplies that they want.
I gotta say, right off the bat, instantly I'm thinking this is a way better movie. Just with the action scenes and the editing and this car chase.
Oh, yeah.
Stood the test of time for me. I thought it was super well done. I felt like I was watching a Fast and Furious film.
Even to today, in today's world, for me, practical effects are just so much better. And all of the effects and car chases and crashes in this film are practical.
Yeah, in the first movie they were practical, but they really do it super well in this one. So not only are you seeing real
hone their skills,
stunt driving, but they are learning how to perform really good stunt driving with really good cinematography and editing, which makes a big difference.
Yeah, it really brings a lot of the car chases to life, and they last a lot longer in this one.
Very well edited and choreographed. I was like, okay, this is what I thought I was going to get when I queued up Mad Max. Not like that first watch, I was like, what is this insanity? But not in a good way. It was because it was in the real world, I think. There's like people in restaurants and just bars, and then all of a sudden cars are flying through vans, just splitting them in half.
Anarchy.
This setting and a barren wasteland, we got crazy cars just ripping on the tarmac and then back on the sand, back on the road. I loved it. So Max outmaneuvers these fools because he's Mad Max and he's got that V8 that he has from the first movie. And a couple of them crash. And we are introduced to one of our first antagonists, whose name is Wes. He is a leather-bound chap wearing assless chaps.
He's a leather daddy.
He has a young man on the back who's credited as the Golden Youth, who has a chain around his neck. And they don't really explain the relationship. There's theories online. It's like, oh, that's his son. And I'm just like, that's his boyfriend. That is 100% that dude's boyfriend. I'm sorry. I don't know what to tell you.
I thought it was a chick when I was first watched it.
Before we hopped on, Nick sincerely in the notes said, there's a chick on the back of the motorcycle. And I said, Nick, that's a man.
You don't know how he identifies.
And that's the whole MO of these franchise movies. The Mad Max franchise, they're just like, gender roles, that was a big deal back in the 80s. the gender roles were set. It's like men do this, women do this. Today's standards, fucking do whatever you want. Nobody cares. Be free. Do whatever. Back then, George Miller was like, nah, dog. Gender roles out the window. I want warrior women, dudes riding on the back with golden blonde hair with exposed chest. I want it all.
But never explained it either.
But that's what I think it makes it so good. He's just like, yeah, this is what it is. And I don't need to explain it.
Because I remember you having a little bit of an issue with the costumes in the first Mad Max. I remember you bringing that up. Like, I don't get this. What are we doing? What's happening here? And now it seems like you've turned the corner and you're like, I'm super into this.
I didn't turn a corner. The movie turned a corner. Because in the first movie, it was very subdued and a lot of innuendos. And I was thinking, what is the subliminal choices for that? This movie, just fucking out and proud. They're just like, this is what it is. There's no confusion here. So all I'm saying is I appreciate how much they're just like throwing it in your face on this one. It's like, hey, this is the deal. Welcome to Mad Max 2, bitches. These guys have like these arrows on their wrists that they can shoot at people. I don't know what they're powered by, but they have like these metal arrows. And there's two bikes coming up on Max. They're both about to shoot Max, and he slams on the brakes. One guy shoots Wes, and he catches an arrow in the arm. They're off in the distance. Max slams on the brakes. He caused this other cart to crash. It starts leaking gasoline. So he runs up to it and starts collecting the gas from that, because gas is just such a hot commodity.
And this is where we kind of learn that the whole world is running off of trying to get gasoline. Like, gasoline is like gold in this post-apocalyptic world.
And there's a weird stare down with Wes. He kind of stares down Max as he's collecting this gas, and he kind of menacingly takes out the arrow and screams at him, and then drives off on his motorcycle. And Max lives to see another day.
When Wes drives off, he decides to just be a super cool guy and pop a wheelie on his way out. And I respected it.
You're going to disrespect me and my boyfriend? Well, check out this sick wheelie. Bet you can't do this. Like a cool guy pulling out of a parking lot, you know?
Yeah, he just kind of, and then he's out. And I think Max might be a little intimidated.
I think Max kind of has a pretty good, not upper hand, but equally matched. They may have the numbers, but he's got the muscle car, the shotgun, and a dog.
Yeah, so we get introduced to Max's buddy, his kind of co-pilot and companion in this movie, and it's his dog. And this is a very good boy.
Yeah, and I believe his name is just Dog.
There's a lot of characters in this film that are their name is just kind of their role in the film. Like, Dog is Dog. We'll meet some characters later on that don't really get it. I think there might only be like 4 or 5 named characters in this film.
There's also a dead guy in the semi-truck, and he has a music box that plays Happy Birthday. And Max just swipes it off that guy. So Max drives off, and he encounters this. And how do you pronounce this, Nick? Is it like the sandwich, like a gyro, or is it gyro?
It is not like it's a gyro, like a gyrocopter.
Okay, a gyro helicopter, which I guess is a personal helicopter that technically needs a runway to take off. It can't just start flying upwards like a real helicopter. But it looks like if a go-kart married a helicopter.
Yes, some folks might have seen this. It's like a single-person helicopter. There's no enclosed cockpit. It's just a seat, some props, and an engine on the back with a few wheels.
It looks very homemade.
I mean, you could go look it up online. There's people who do make their own little gyrocopters. I would not recommend building your own and trying to fly it, but...
So he rolls up on this gyro helicopter. He's ambushed by the pilot, who's hiding in the sand. Apparently, this pilot had the plan of putting a snake on his helicopter and hoping that the snake would take out the would-be thief trying to steal the gasoline from the gyrocopter. Max, being the badass that he is, he freaking swipes that snake with his bare hand, holds it in his hand, and then the pilot, like a Tusken Raider, goes, jumps out of the sand and scares the shit out of everybody. And he has a crossbow. There's a lot of bow and arrows and like crossbows, wrist arrow shooters, and I believe it's because guns are not as common.
I think ammunition is probably low. You know, there's not anybody making the ammo, so your ammunition is very precious. So bows, arrows, can be made.
They do touch upon that because Max does have his sawn-off shotgun like he does in the first movie.
Double barrel, yep.
Yeah, the pilot's got Max at crossbow point, and he's wanting his gas out of his car.
Looks like I got myself some gasoline, eh? Hey? Hey, eight? Huh?
Booby trapped. Touch those tanks and...
And Max is like, it's booby trapped, so if you try to go for it, you're going to blow up.
Booby trap.
Well, he says it without saying it, like, go disarm the booby trap, and I want to take your gas. And Max has a machete right next to the booby trap switch, just in case stuff gets hinky. But
for this exact situation.
But this pilot's got a big brain. He's like, oh, how do I know you don't have a weapon underneath there? And then the underneath the car shot shows Max moving it from the machete to the switch, and he disengages it because he doesn't know what's going to happen. So he's like, okay, I'll keep playing along. And then he walks up to his car like he's going to get in and leave. And pilot's like, no, dog, you got to stay here. And he gets him away from the door. Boom. The good boy jumps out. The Australian cattle dog.
Goodest boy.
And Max gets the upper hand. He comes out on top. And then at this point, pilot's super desperate. And he says, hey, I can get you what you want. Everybody's looking for gasoline. I know where to get it.
Yeah, he's basically, Max is going to kill him, which is reasonable because he was just about to kill Max. So it's like, okay, well, you clearly can't be trusted here.
It's all fair.
So he tells Max about this, basically this fuel depot. There's this compound with a bunch of the gas.
20 miles from here, permanent they are, refining, ka-junk.
Max goes ahead, takes him as a prisoner, and leads him off and is like, you're going to show me. So he's coming along for the ride. He is now one of the characters in our journey.
And he is riding shotgun with a shotgun in his face, and he's at the mercy of the dog because the dog has a bone in his mouth with a string tied around it that's connected to the trigger of the shotgun. We have an Australian cattle dog, and if Soka was in charge of this man's life with a bone in her mouth, the string on the trigger,
there's not a chance.
And she saw that jackrabbit, that guy would be dead.
I was thinking, like, well, what if the dog does mess up? You have such a mess in the back of your car at that point.
Well, we will learn later that the gun was not actually loaded.
It's a bold move.
Now, Nick, where did they go from here?
So they end up climbing this mountain that overlooks this fuel supply depot. It's like a compound of settlers, and apparently they have all the fuel, and they're staking it out. You know, I think they're trying to figure out a way to get in there, get some of the fuel after they spend the night there and eat dog food. Because apparently that's what's good for food. It's canned, it preserves really well, so you eat the dog food. 4 people end up leaving this compound, and they get chased down by these marauders, raiders, this gang.
Who are split up into 2 different factions. Because I don't know if you were watching with subtitles on, but I was.
I was not, so fill me in.
Oh, I will enlighten you real quick. So when they're up on this vantage point, they're looking down at the refinery. The pilot's basically explaining everything to Max and the audience. He says there's this group of people that run the refinery, and then the same group of misfits and marauders are on the outside, circling on their motorcycles and cars, trying to get in. And during the dog food scene, with the subtitles on, we can hear their leader. He says, Schmegma crazies to the left, gay boy berserkers to the gate. Like he's kind of coordinating his 2 factions to and where to go. And if you don't know what Schmegma is, you can go ahead and Google it, but it's gross.
Yeah, make sure you have safe search on.
And gay boy berserkers are pretty self-explanatory. So I believe the gay boy berserkers are those leather guys like Wes and the Golden Youth.
Leather daddies, yep.
Leather daddies on the bikes. They kind of dress like village people, cops. And they're on like old cop motorcycles and cop cars. And then the Schmegmas, I believe, are just in like those little carts that are kind of have like the nets on them, like little dune buggies. And they kind of have like full cloth coverage head to toe. You cannot hear this if you're not watching with no subtitles. You can't hear this at all.
This is the first time I'm hearing of the Schmegmas.
I'd be shocked if you can hear that. The other subtitles with this is, I am your lord, attack my vermin, attack. So with the subtitles on, you can understand there's some sort of hierarchy, and these guys have hilarious nicknames, which they are
Very
all good
much
with.
so.
They're all good with it. They don't care. But anyway, you're saying a couple of the gasoline people leave, a couple of them.
And they get very quickly run down by these marauders. I don't know why. I don't think it's ever made clear to us why they left.
Maybe. I mean, I feel like every post-apocalyptic movie and TV show, there's always a run. You got to go on a run for something. I don't know what there is to get in this barren desert wasteland that you can't get at this compound. I mean, maybe if they know of a well somewhere for water.
Or some food. I don't know. Nobody ever explains how they get food in this film, now that I think about it. I know we have the dog food.
Yeah,
but
that's all you need.
I don't know where it comes from and how you get more. 2 of the people are in one of those little buggies is run down and they crash. The guy is beaten basically within an inch of his life, and the lady is raped and beaten to death. It was pretty jarring.
Very violent. But there was a hilarious juxtaposition in the scene with Max and the gyro captain, because Max whips out, he has tools strapped to him at all times, binoculars strapped to him. There's a wrench strapped to him, maybe a knife, and he uses his binoculars, and the fucking gyro captain takes out this extending
telescoping lens
like a pirate, and he's looking at it through the telescope, and then Max looks up at it and he's like, I want that. He doesn't say anything. He just takes the telescope and hands the gyro captain the binoculars. But you're seeing this horrific act down on the highway.
There's another interesting thing about this scene where the pilot seems very disturbed by all of this. Max really has no emotion towards it.
Yeah.
The pilot is the one who's like looking away once the lady gets killed, kind of looks very uncomfortable during it all. Max's facial expression is very matter of fact as far as like waiting for his opportunity to go down there to strike. And it's interesting because we were talking about, the character development of Max in the original Mad Max, where all this bad stuff happened to him and now he's this new person with this new life. And I was thinking to myself, old Mad Max, right, the police officer Mad Max, would have gone down there and tried to intervene. In this, Mad Max is just a lot more stoic and has just kind of accepted this is the way the road works now.
Oh yeah,
this is
absolutely.
how the road. This is road justice now. This isn't real justice.
No, he's hardened and jaded, unfortunately.
So eventually, once this lady is now dead, she gets shot with one of the harpoon things to really the final blow there.
Harpoon arrow, yeah.
They eventually go down there, get the guy. And they go up to the guy who's been beaten within an inch of his life. And the guy's like, thank you. And Max says, you're going to help me. Again, kind of the new version of Max is, I don't care about your life. I'm a survivor out here. Yep. And so he picks up the guy and they take him back to this compound. Basically, he's like, I'm exchanging this man's life for some of your fuel. Unfortunately, within 10 seconds of getting the guy inside, he dies. And the people are like, your deal's with him, not with us. You get no fuel. And then they are extremely hostile to him. This guy who literally just brought back one of your citizens, tried to save his life.
I mean, I don't really blame them for that because he kind of looks like some of the berserkers. He's dressed in leather. He's a hardened man. He seems he fits the mold.
He does
fits the bill of the people they're scared of. So I think they have a right to be kind of paranoid about outsiders, especially if they wear black leather. Speaking of, these guys dress in like yellow and white colors, and I got medieval vibes off of them.
Yeah.
Like their leader, Papadopoulos, what's his name?
Oh, his
Papagapus.
Papagayo.
Papadoc.
Papagayo,
yeah. Like blonde hair, very sophisticated, regal looking people who dressed mostly in white and yellow, and kind of just resembled like royal clothing from the medieval era for whatever reason.
I thought they almost looked like if a cult started up in this post-apocalyptic world, they'd look
which
like
essentially is what they are. Kind of.
Okay, so we're on the same page.
They're the gasoline cult.
They're the cult of gas. So they handcuff Max to one of their rails, and all of a sudden they hear the marauders coming. And now it's time, like, they snap into action because this isn't their first rodeo. They're basically like, okay, it's time to defend.
Like, yeah,
the
here we go again. Yep.
Yep.
They're ready to, once again, fight for their life and fight for their home.
So the marauders roll up, and on what seems to be our main big bad guy, on the front of his car, he has the other 2 prisoners that were chased down from this compound, almost like you'd see like a mermaid statue on the front of a ship. You know, the old ships, they're like on the bow and they're just facing forward. It's very much, if you've seen Mad Max Fury Road, that was the inspiration for that scene. Having the guys basically tied to the front of
mounted to the front of the vehicle.
Yep. We are introduced to the Marauder King, Lord Humongous.
Okay, Nick, remember when I said it was a lot of innuendos in the first movie, and this movie they're very out and proud?
Mm-hmm.
Lord Humongous versus Toe Cutter is a prime example of that. Lord Humongous coming out and basically just wearing leather belts.
I mean, he's shirtless, yeah, with leather straps.
And I might say he's rocking that look. He's making it look real good.
He's looking intimidating. He's ripped. He has not missed a workout in a long time.
No, he is making it look sexy and making it look intimidating. This guy is jacked. Perfect shape. Specimen.
Oh, big time. What happens is they kind of... So when we first get to this compound, we're introduced to this child who looks like... He's called a feral child. That's how he's credited.
Going back to what we said about not many characters having real names.
Like, even the pilot doesn't have a name. He's Gyro Pilot.
Exactly.
And
he's like one of the main characters. He's called Gyro Pilot or Gyro Captain.
So this feral kid... So imagine the youngest brother on the Wild Thornberrys.
Donnie.
He's basically that. Donnie, yeah, thank you. Yeah, the kid doesn't speak at all. He just goes, he just growls and makes noises.
But he's part of the compound. He's part of the gas tribe.
Yes. No one's taught him to speak in this tribe. He's already shared a moment with Max. Max gives him the birthday...
The music box.
Music box, yeah. But this kid, apparently there's tunnels all around here. This kid climbs out of one of the tunnels, takes a boomerang, hucks it, misses Wes, and hits that golden boy on the side of the head. Insta-death.
Boom! Headshot!
Headshot.
He headshots Wes's boyfriend, speculated boyfriend, but he straight domes this fool, and this guy
Wes
dies.
loses it. Yeah. Oh, it's instant.
He snipes this guy with the boomerang, which apparently is as sharp as a blade because it cuts through his head. That's how he dies.
It just embeds in his skull. Yeah.
It doesn't, yeah, it's not like a decapitation. It just slams into his, it cuts so deep that it was just an instant death. Nice shot.
It was a hell of a shot.
You kind of have two chances when you throw a boomerang. You have that initial throw and then the comeback.
Yeah, this was on the initial throw. This was all the force of just, this kid's got a cannon. Cannon. Wes loses his mind, melts down.
He goes berserk because he obviously is in love with this person and he died.
Loves his golden boy.
And Wes is kind of unhinged throughout this whole movie. He's always screaming. He's always showing his emotion. He's like, kill them all, kill them. And then Lord Humongous has to choke this fool out to get him to calm down.
Puts him in the sleeper.
He's literally in the middle of his negotiation and Wes is going nuts. And then he lovingly chokes him out. He says, we all lost somebody. And he's like, you can tell he cares for Wes. He's not like a ruthless leader. So he's got compassion. But he's like, dude, I got to choke you out. You're kind of being a problem right now. And I'm trying to make my offer.
You're kind of jacking my flow right now.
Yeah, so then Humongous chokes him out, and then he continues his offer. And his offer is basically, hey, compound people, walk away. Give me the gas. I want the gold, and you can have your lives. Very one-sided offer.
I mean, how do you trust this man? I don't know. But the Marauders end up leaving, and the compound folk...
They give him like a day to decide. They're like, we'll be back.
Yeah, and the compound folk have a dispute about whether to take their offer and trust Humongous or if they're better off fighting. Basically, they come up to this, like, we can flee, but we need to flee with our gas in the next 24 hours. And there's talks about this paradise up north that's like 2,000 miles away. But they make a deal with Max. Max basically is like, hey, let me go do it because I'm not going to be your prisoner here. Let me go get the semi from earlier that he saw at the crash scene.
Yeah, he has no choice because he's at the mercy of this compound because they do have his car.
They have his weapons and everything. Yeah,
there's like a mechanic character that's like, oh, the last of the V8 Interceptors. That's a rare coin. It's history.
It's his old police vehicle from the first movie.
It's the souped up one that police mechanic was working on, and then he gets in at the end and raises hell against the biker gang. Apparently this is a hot commodity, and it makes sense because a lot of the cars are dune buggies, motorcycles, pickup trucks, semis.
Yeah, but these settlers haven't really been out, I would say, in a 5 mile radius in a long time. So this guy doesn't know how. Maybe there's just a whole
Hey, you
fleet of
don't know.
interceptors out there. You don't know things.
No, they go on run. They go on runs and they go scope stuff out. So maybe they're looking for cars.
Maybe they are looking for cars.
But Max has no choice, and he's just like, all right, well, I guess the smart move is like, I can go get that semi truck. That way I can bring it back, and you guys have a way to haul the tanker away, because the tanker trailer is where they keep all their refined gasoline.
And so he needs to go get the semi so they can hook it up and they can make their run for it. And then they can give Max his car back with some gas. He'll be on his way.
He says, I just want all the juice I can carry, meaning gasoline. And that's the deal. So it's a very simple premise.
Yeah, so he goes out at night and he sneaks past the Marauders and runs into our helicopter pilot.
We see them catch up with the pilot, and he's dragging a piece of the large tree branch behind him, still chained up. And they make their way back to the gyrocopter, speaking of. They find a dead bandit there. And this is where we actually learn that Max's gun was empty the entire time, because he picks the shell off the dead guy and loads it into his shotgun. And the gyro pilot's like, that was empty the whole time? Like, I got played for a fool. So not only is Max badass, he's a smart guy.
He's a smart guy. But I don't blame the pilot. That's not a risk you're willing to take. Like, oh, I got fooled. It's like, no, you reacted accordingly. So he gets the semi started and he starts driving back to the compound.
At this scene, the truck is driving by and the Marauders start chasing them. And actually, again, with this scene, really cool camera work.
Mm-hmm.
There's a shot where one of the guys is getting in the car and the camera's just riding shotgun and stays with them. It films the guy running in. He gets into the car. He starts it. He drives off. There's other cars in the background. In the far background, there's Max in the semi truck. And I appreciated the better use of cameras and angles and cinematography.
Definitely a step up from the first one. So Max drives his semi and he's basically like, I'm bringing the party back to the compound.
Pulls an Iron Man. Says, I'm bringing the party to you.
He pulls into the compound. They close the gate. The gate's just a bus, like a yellow bus that they drive back and forth to seal off the opening.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's time to defend the compound. And this compound's got some firepower.
Oh, dude, they got flamethrowers. I mean, the gyro captain does say it in the beginning in that stakeout scene. He says they got it all. They got gasoline, guns. I think he does say they do have flamethrowers, and they got flamethrowers at the gate, and they light a couple cars
like
on
mounted
fire.
flamethrowers. Light some cars on fire, light some people on fire.
Car blows up. Wes does make it inside the barrier. He does make it inside the gates.
Mm-hmm.
And this dude's got some moves because he does like a McTwist off a high.
It's the most unnecessary flip I've ever seen.
Yeah, dude, this guy's got some acrobatic moves. He like jumps and like twists, flips over, and then he headbutts a guy. It's like, okay, all right, Wes, he's pretty pissed off about the golden youth getting headshotted with a boomerang.
Eventually, the compound defends themselves. Minor casualties. There's a few casualties, but for the most part, I'd say it was a successful defense.
And I thought this was going to break the deal, but I don't know. I think that's actually a violation of the Marauders, because they just saw the truck driving by and they're like, oh, we're going to go attack this and then attack the base. So actually the Marauders kind of broke the contract first, because Lord Humongous was like, we'll give you a day. And they didn't know what their scheme was. And frickin' Wes, man, he's just got a stick up his assless chaps.
I think this is where you realize, like, we can't trust these Marauders. They're just murderous gang of thieves.
They fend them off. For the most part, the compound is pretty thankful. The colony is thankful. There is a character named, just simply, again, not a real name, it's just Warrior Woman. They kind of hint at like, oh, this could be a love interest for Max. There's like a little stare down they have. I gotta say, this lady's doing it for me. I don't know if it's the football pads and the confidence, but big Warrior Woman fan over here.
She was killing it. But Max don't have time for that. He's a road warrior.
So a lot of them are thankful, but Papagayo, he's got some words for Max. He sees Max's potential, and I think he's just angry that Max is going to dip. And I don't blame Max. Max has his gasoline tanks.
He does nothing to these people.
I guess it's a smart move by what the hell is his name? Papagayo.
You can call him Papadopoulos.
I'm gonna call him Papa Doc. So Papa Doc's like, he knows Max is a valuable asset, and I think he is lashing out because he just knows his potential and he really thinks that he can help out this crew. Again, that doesn't mean Max owes him.
Yeah, it's the kind of speech you'd expect from like a rough and tough football coach to a group of inner city high school kids. She's like, oh, you're just going to quit? You're just going to roll over? You're just like, oh, I mean, don't push the guy.
Max is getting gridiron ganged by Papa Doc.
He's like, what happened? Your wife die or something? And you're just like, Papa Doc.
That's actually exactly what happened.
Yeah, it's like, okay.
He's like, you're out there with the garbage. And he calls Max a scavenger, like a lowlife. Like, when are you going to fight for something worthy? He basically challenges his views and ambitions out of spite because he really wants him to join his crew.
I think it's a terrible strategy.
But Max is like, nah, I'm good. I'm going to leave.
I'm not going with you on your journey up north.
No, and then it's funny because he has screwed over this gyro pilot multiple times.
Mm-hmm.
But the gyro pilot's like, you're going to break up the team? We're such a good partnership. And Max is just like, dude, like, you tried to jump me and kill me. I tried to kill you. I tied you up. I left you up on that mountain. I left you at the truck. So the semi-truck scene when the gyro pilot flies him to the truck, like doing him a solid. And first off, I didn't think they were going to fly this thing. I didn't know this thing was going to actually fly in this movie.
It's actually flying.
It's flyable. I thought it was just like a set piece.
No.
But this gyrocopter,
it's a real thing.
It's very important in the plot. It does very useful things, and it actually flies on screen. I was kind of impressed. But he flies into the semi-truck. Max is like, okay, peace. That's when he throws him the keys to the handcuffs.
Yeah, good luck.
And says, go do what you want. And then the gyro pilot, he gets in the copter and he kind of is the overhead watch on Max during the chase scene back to the compound. So gyro pilot's all in on this friendship, buddy cop dynamic, and Max is like, no, we're not a team. Like, we literally try to kill each other.
In this post-apocalyptic world, everybody wants a family, but Max had his chance at his family, and he has no intentions of getting a new one.
He splits, and the bikers chase him all night because he sets off at night, and we jump straight into a daytime shot. So they have been driving for well over 8 hours.
No need to fill up for gas.
No, that V8 has really good MPG. This is like maybe the earliest in film history I've seen NOS be hit. They do hit nitrous oxide. It literally is
multiple
a close-up.
Times. Yeah,
nitrous oxide. I'm like, man, Fast and Furious really did take a lot from this film specifically, with all the convoy action scenes.
Oh yeah,
the final battle is basically a giant highway chase, and they hit the NOS before NOS was a brand name. They cause him to crash. They injure Max and the dog. We're all thinking the same thing, Nick.
It's the only thing I could think of in this scene is the dog kind of scurries out of the car, and you realize there's going to be a showdown with the bad guys. I'm thinking, please don't kill the dog. Marauder kills the dog.
We get John Wicked again. You forget there was a dog in the first movie because it wasn't like Max's partner. It was really just like the family dog.
Yep.
But the dog does get killed by the biker gang. But they fuck up and they fall for the booby trap. And unfortunately, one of the last of the V8s blows up.
Boom.
Boobied.
Everybody around Max, all the Marauders, die. But this is another one of those scenes where Wes is there. He sees the car blow up. He knows Max is like gravely injured. And he just leaves the scene.
He's too lazy to hike down. He's like, he's probably dead.
Yeah. It's just a lot of unfinished business.
It's a bad trope in movies when there's just an assumed death.
Here we are at the all is lost moment. And who comes to save the day, James?
The frickin' gyro captain is like, bro, I got your back.
Yeah.
He is simping for Max's friendship.
He sees the explosion in the distance from the compound, and he's like, I got to snap into action. Snags his little gyrocopter,
he's out.
He's there. He wasn't going to let Max die. So he goes out there, grabs Max, brings him back to the compound.
He needs medical attention.
But we're running out of time. We have 24 hours till Lord Humongous comes back.
Oh, less than
And
that.
when Lord Humongous comes back, yeah, right. We've been on the clock up to this point. So even though badly injured, Max is now on board with going north, and he is going to drive the fuel tanker semi in this convoy.
This is, again, kind of echoes the first movie. He has nothing to lose. Once again, they already got his car. They already got his dog. So he snaps a second time and becomes Matter Max and says, I'm going to drive the tanker, and because I hate these guys and I want to be a part of this fight.
Irate Max is on screen now.
Based Max.
So this convoy consists of 3 people on the armored tanker. So we have Warrior Chick, James's gal over there.
I love Warrior Woman. She's amazing.
A couple other folks. Then
if I didn't have a wife lined up,
we'd go find her.
Yeah.
Probably just 70 plus years old now, but hey, we'll make it work.
Yeah, I'm okay with it.
And then we got Papa Doc running support in this future car thing. It essentially looks like it belongs on like one of those like Red Bull downhill derbies. Like it's just pieced together metal silver bullet thing.
An open wheel derby car. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's exactly what it looks like. And also the feral child has snuck on.
Did you ever see Miracle on Lane 2?
Yes.
With Frankie Muniz? Yeah, like one of those.
It's basically that. Man, a lot of movies drew inspiration, huh? And this feral child has snuck on board. No one watches this kid. Nobody knows where this kid is.
He's a rogue agent of the compound.
The Marauders go after this convoy. The rest of the settlers flee in basically a bunch of other cars that they have that I was unaware that they had before, but they have them.
They can store a lot in that maybe like 50 by 50 yards.
Yeah, it looks like just a scrap heap. Looks like a junkyard enclosed area. But then we get this chase, and this final chase is wild. It is great. I don't even know where you want to start with it.
Hold on. Well, I mean, we have to start with the biggest on-screen explosion I've ever seen.
Dude.
So as they're fleeing the compound, a couple of the bikers are infiltrating it, thinking like, cool, they left. They're upholding their part of the deal. We're going to raid it now and take what's ours. Nope. This shit blows up, and it keeps blowing up.
Yes.
It's not like those cheesy explosions where they show 24 different angles. There was just more added explosions. Like there's a big explosion, then there's a bigger explosion, and then there's like a medium explosion, and then another big explosion. This base is done.
They must have just got clearance to just be like, yeah, blow up whatever you want.
Yeah, no, it was all
town.
real. Yep, and this shit blows up.
It looks like a bomb was dropped. It was quite the explosion.
The base blows up, and now we enter the final battle on the highway. We got a big semi-tanker. We got all the compound colonists in their own separate cars and vehicles. Some are hanging out on the tanker, like you said. And we got the gay boy berserkers and the schmegma crazies up on their ass in their assless chaps.
And it's just mayhem. People
Wild.
jumping onto vehicles, trying to board the tanker. Warrior woman is shot and killed. Unfortunately, James, I'm sorry.
I was pretty mad about that. But yeah, a lot of people die in this, actually. Going back to that medieval feeling I had when I saw these guys, it did feel like just like a historic battle where it's just all these warriors are going down, all these soldiers.
Humongous throws this spiky thing just right into the back of Papa Doc, murders him.
Yeah, there's a lot of brutal deaths. At one point there's a chain and like hook thrown from the bad guys, and it hooks into one of the colonists like in his leg and kind of pins him up against the cage that he's in. He's in like a very makeshift homemade basket on the back of the tanker. And with no plan, they throw the hook, and immediately as soon as it hooks on, their car loses control. It flips over. It yanks the basket down, and dude blows up because everyone's packing Molotov cocktails.
Everything's blown up. Everything that hits the ground blows up.
One guy has a Molotov cocktail, and he drops it, and his hands are on fire. There's crossbows. There's the motorcycle guy gets ran over by the tanker axle.
Yeah, he tries to stab the tire, and then he just gets pulled under the tanker, and just boom.
No one really had a bright idea going into this fight. They're just like, well, balls out. This is the first time I'm trying this.
But the pilot shows up and he's dropping Molotovs. He lights a car on fire.
Lord Humongous throws like a trident or something at Papa Doc. Gyro Captain flies in, and I just kept laughing every time I saw this freaking dorky ass helicopter come in and drop Molotov cocktails. So he drops one on Lord Humongous, and now Lord Humongous is on fire. And he is 95% skin, 5% leather. That's his outfit in this movie.
But the top of his head we see before is kind of burned. This man's been set on fire before.
It ain't nothing to him. And he kind of wears like a Jason Voorhees mask.
Yeah.
The whole time to paint a picture for people who haven't seen.
Oh, there's also this part where
there's 2 hostages.
Yeah. That's what I was going to bring up. They're still tied on the front of Humongous's vehicle.
How long have they been mounted to this car?
Well, they did take them off. Remember, they like strung them up on top of the mountain on that one night.
Yeah, they're just kind of showcasing like, we still got your guys.
Yeah, so these guys have just been tied up for a while. They're on front of the car that's chasing right behind the tanker, and the tanker at some point hits its brakes, and these people just slam right into the back of the tanker and just get smushed.
Their heads pop off.
Yeah, it's just
like an action figure. Their heads go just.
Yeah, and the effect looks like if you stomped on like a McDonald's ketchup packet. It's just a quick little of red.
And I was like, oh God, that was so brutal.
And it's such a small moment in this chase. Like,
it
it's
is.
Not like, it's just like it happened.
The Gyro Captain,
yeah,
he gets shot with arrows. There's a shot of him going, ah! And I'm like, oh man, this is the end of this guy. And then they show a shot where the gyrocopter just kind of slams into the ground. And I'm like, this dude is dead on impact, because
it's the only thing that doesn't explode. It's the only thing in the scene that doesn't explode.
Yeah, it was nuts. And I was like, oh man, Gyro Captain's down, Warrior Woman's down, the mechanic, he's out. I mean, a lot of people are falling. Wes makes his way up to the tanker. He actually boards the tanker, and at some point Wes like falls in front of the truck. I think he's on top. And maybe it's when Max slams on the brakes and he falls in front, and you're like, okay, cool. That's the end of Wes, because he just fell off the truck and he probably got ran over.
Now, something that happened in the cab of this truck is a few shotgun shells got knocked around, and they're sitting on the hood of the truck precariously. And Max tells the feral child, like, go get those. And so the kid's like, this is the one thing now that scares the kid. A group of marauders in front of him, and all he has is his boomerang. Not scared. He'll murder somebody. This situation freaks him out. So he starts climbing out onto the hood of the truck to get the shotgun shell, and crazy-ass Wes pops up with eyes aflame with rage.
It's supposed to be a jump scare moment, and it is.
Yeah, it got me by surprise.
So Max actually, for whatever reason, turns the tanker around, and Lord
I think he got like a
Humongous,
tire shot out, and you had to
kind of adjust for it, and then Lord Humongous is back on the side of the road because he just was set on fire.
Yes.
And he shakes that off, and he's like, I got to keep going. And what happens at this the grand finale of this chase scene?
So Lord Humongous basically has this super bright idea. He's like, there's only one way to stop this road warrior in this tanker, and that is just a straight up head-on collision.
That'll do it. I mean, technically,
it worked.
If you think about it, yeah, no. If the goal was to stop the truck, and Lord Humongous is down for his people and down for his cause, it worked.
He's a ride or die. So Max pulls the feral kid in. Wes is still on the front of the tanker, and we just get the big time head-on collision. And the tanker flips, and it's just chaos.
Lord Humongous's car basically disintegrates because it's going up against a semi with a loaded tanker.
And Wes also got smushed, just like the hostages.
He is spatchcocked.
That's a great term. I like that. The lady and I spatchcocked chickens, and that's exactly what happened. He got flattened, pancaked. So the rest of the marauders are staring at this scene of wreckage down at the semi, and we see that the tanker's flipped over, and it's not spilling out gas out of its valves, it's spilling out sand.
Yeah, it's like dirt.
And so the Marauders, with their leaders dead, they see the sand, they're like, what are we doing here? They just drive off. Sticking with the theme of just driving off, but this one's justified because they're like, we have no direction, we have no leader, there's no gas here. I don't know where they're going to go back to. I don't know who the new leader comes from after Lord Humongous, but not our problem.
Might just be a whole hierarchy collapse after that.
Most likely, yeah.
The gyro captain survived.
Not a scratch on him.
He is unfazed by that helicopter crash.
Yeah, he's a problem.
He's a cockroach.
So he shows up. Max and the child have survived. You could tell Max cares for this kid. It's pretty implied, right? He lost his kid. Now there's this kid. They have a little connection. And so then they go meet up with the settlers. They had the gas with them the whole time. They put him in barrels and put him in the cars. They bamboozled the Marauders.
Again, a big brain helps in this world.
It sure does. And then we get the narrator back.
And it turns out the narrator is that little feral kid.
Yeah, we learn a couple things. The gyro pilot has now become the new leader after Papa Doc.
And we wrap it up with the POV of the feral kid.
As for me, I grew to manhood. In the fullness of time, I became the leader, the chief of the great northern tribe, and a road warrior.
Great, and then we end on that they never saw the road warrior again.
He lives now, only in my memories.
His friend, the Wanderer, someone he had no actual communication with words, just all feelings and actions, who he simply knew as a road warrior. There's a shot where they're just driving away, and Max is just on the highway next to all this car carnage. And they're just like, okay, thank you for your service. I understand you don't want to come with us. And that's just like a memory that sticks with the feral kid.
Max started on the road and he ends on the road.
And that is Mad Max 2, ladies and gentlemen.
Road Warrior.
What a ride. I'm pumped up.
I'm glad.
I'm pumped up. Do you have any nitpicks you want to go over? Nitpicks.
I personally didn't have any nitpicks. I mean, there were a few inconsistencies here and there. But as far as for what
well, hold on. You did have a nitpick. It looks like you deleted it.
Oh, I had a nitpick. We brought it up during the plot talk there. It was just, why didn't the pilot's helicopter blow up?
Oh.
Everything else in the scene blew up.
He's built different. I don't know what you wanted me to say.
At the end of the day, this movie just kind of is what it is, so...
My nitpicks would just be like the logistical, like the physics of it all. Like the tanker. Why would you fill it with sand? Do you know how long it would take to fill that with shovels? I assume they don't have excavators. I don't know why you just don't keep it empty. That way the tanker would be a lot faster. Max would have less weight to kind of travel, and he can do a little bit more maneuvers. And like, how do the arrows work on the wrists? Those are the nitty gritty nitpicks that I have, but it's an 80s action movie. I can't really ask too much about it, but if I were to challenge it, it'd just be like the little physics parts of it.
Oh yeah, I have some of those as well, but like I was saying, for what the movie is, you just kind of give a lot of the logistical stuff a pass as far as this is how post-apocalyptic world worked. And this, because something I enjoyed this movie did, and that's why I don't want to, get too too picky.
Too nitty-picky.
Too nitty-picky. A lot of post-apocalyptic movies do like post-apocalyptic in the future. And so you kind of put like future technology in there, and this has happened over the course of 50 years. But this movie is like, no, this happened in real time in the 80s. And I like that, right? Like this is post-apocalyptic here and now of the times. And so, yeah, maybe you don't currently have the technology that you need to make some of these things work, but I appreciate you tried to keep it within the time period because that's really hard to do. So I give it a pass on that.
My other nitpick is just that we get John Wicked again. I don't like seeing dogs die. And the first one wasn't really like an emotional beat. This one was, because Dog was a featured character. He was a beloved character in this movie. And I just don't like seeing dogs get hurt or die. And this is a repeat offense for the Mad Max franchise. I swear to God, if Return to Thunderdome does that, I'm done.
If there's any dogs dying in Thunderdome, we just turn it off and we end the review right there.
If there's any dogs left in Australia at this point, because apparently they keep killing them.
And there's also no other dogs. It's just the good boy of Max. You think there'd be like more animals roaming around? Just a bunch of kangaroos.
No one's getting neutered. There's no kangaroos, actually.
Yeah, where are the roos?
Where are the wallabies?
That's my nitpick. Where are the roos?
So let's get into our a couple talking points here.
We brought it up at the beginning, but just how much I do enjoy practical effects and how much better it makes a movie when you're not taking, because CGI is such a crapshoot, and we talk about it all the time, how a lot of times it doesn't stand the test of time. And bad CGI can really take me out of a movie. Like if I'm supposed to be in a tense and serious situation, I see bad CGI, I'll laugh at it. But with all these practical effects, they just stand the test of time so well. And if anything, it just gets more impressive with time. It's like, wow, you were able to do that in the early 80s. Like you were able to pull all this off, especially when you look at a $3 million budget. You're like, you blew up a lot of stuff. You had a lot of munitions on set. You went through vehicles. Like I don't know how many takes. Like it's more impressive. Like if you did a lot of this in one take, that's because you were blowing stuff up like that. You can't just do that over and over and over again on $3 million in Australia. Just how much I enjoy practical effects. And this movie did it so wonderfully.
You can't beat just real stunts, real driving. I think CGI should be used for those fantastical elements that are not based in reality. Mm-hmm. And if something is supposed to be realistic, you should do it for real.
I agree.
Something I want to bring up is just a quick comparison from the first movie to this movie. Mm-hmm. These two movies are vastly different. I touched upon it at the beginning. It's a complete 180 on the costumes, the editing, the action, the tone. This one had a little bit more comedic elements, a little bit more self-awareness. Mm-hmm. Where the first one, where if something was funny, it was kind of like laughing at the movie. And this one did have a couple comedic elements. There's a scene where Max brings the tanker back, and there's a funny like scene with the mechanic, and he's yelling out stuff of what's wrong with the truck, and there's another guy yelling back at Papa Doc.
How's the rig?
The rig! How is she?
Got a cracked timing case cover and it's broken a couple of teeth off the timing gears.
Got a cracked timing case cover, it's broken a couple of teeth off the timing gear.
Well, what does all that mean?
Yeah, okay, but what does that mean? What does that mean?
24 hours.
24 hours?
They've got 12.
You've got 12! Okay.
The gyro captain had a lot of comedic jokes, a lot of little bits there with him. The first movie was just like a weird watch for me. I was like, is this supposed to be wacky? Is this supposed to be a drama? And that's where it kind of lost me. I have to say, this is like one of those rare occurrences where the sequel is better than the original. The sequels usually weren't as good. It was kind of like a rehash or just trying to capitalize on the first one's success. But the Mad Max franchise, they really ramped it up with the second one. So I just think it's such a wild comparison when you're looking at Mad Max 1979 to Mad Max the Road Warrior from 1981.
I personally enjoyed that Mad Max 1 had maybe a little bit more.
There was a story in there. It was very simple and there was character progression. But like, if you're not going to do it big, I'll take a wacky just thrill ride over a very melancholy story.
Well, I mean, when you have, what is it, 6 times the budget, you get to take those liberties. I appreciate where Mad Max 1 came in, really breaking ground with a lot less of the budget, didn't have the success, right? George Miller's like, I'm just kind of going out on a limb here. And that makes it a little more impressive. And am I wrong in saying like you saw Fury Road before you seen any of the original Mad Maxes?
You're not wrong. But I did have a notion of what Mad Max was about. And again, I said this in the Mad Max podcast, our first one. I was expecting barren wastelands, big exhaust pipes, wacky cars, and leather. And I didn't get that in the first one. So that's where it's like it was a culture shock to me.
Yeah, I think it's really hard to like appreciate where like Mad Max originally was and then where it's gone as kind of this cult classic, especially with Road Warrior, Thunderdome, and now Fury Road, and to like have that expectation set. Because now number 2 like kind of feeds, it's like a drug that feeds the addiction. You're like, yeah, this is what I wanted. But like if you were watching this back in the day, you don't know what you wanted. But like one where you're like, wow, that was really fun and cool. And then number two is like, holy, it just blows your mind even more instead of just being like, well, there's what I expected. It's hard. And that's just
it's not our fault. We live in
it's nobody's fault.
We live in today's times. We're born in the 90s. It was like a pop culture phenomenon in the 80s, and it just became like a known thing. It got parodied in countless shows and movies. So we as millennials have a pre-notion about what this Mad Max franchise is all about. So when you go into that first movie, you're like, what the hell is this?
Well, it's Fury Road's fault for being so good and being so long in between sequels that I think it reinvigorated the original franchise, which is great. And Fury Road, we'll eventually watch it, but spoiler alert, I loved it. When I was talking about sequels, right, kind of coming out one after the other, kind of making it more cohesive. And then you have like the 30-year jump where you get effects and budgets, and all of a sudden you're like, wow, this, you see Fury Road, like this is what Mad Max should be. And you go back and you're like, oh, but this is what it was. And it's just a very interesting concept.
It's funny you say that, because when I saw Fury Road, I never saw any of the original Mad Maxes. So I was like, okay, I'll go into this. And I'm already coming in there watching all the Fast and Furious films. I have all these action movies under my belt. So I have high standards, and I thought it was very well done, but like, I didn't have that nostalgia factor to go off of like, wow, what an homage to Road Warrior and Thunderdome.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, I don't really remember a lot of it. I was like, oh yeah, that was cool, but I didn't understand the background of Mad Max. So now I'm really looking forward to watching it. Now that I have Mad Max 2 under my belt and Thunderdome coming up before then.
Absolutely.
Speaking of these sequels in this franchise, I'm going to give this like a sarcastic selling point. If I were a producer trying to get this movie greenlit, I would say, let's take Mad Max 1 and crank it up to 69, period.
That's beautiful. I just said it's Mad Max, but more.
It's Mad Max, but Madder Max.
Yeah, even Madder Max. It's just keep. If Mad Max were to keep evolving, if we were to basically get all of our stunts and our characters and just turn them up a few notches, this is what we get. So let's go ahead and give ourselves, look at what other guys are saying. So Rotten Tomatoes, actually, this is a 95% with the critics.
Which is not surprising because, like we covered many times, it's an approval rating. So 95% of the critics thought this was at least a 6.5 or a 6.0. They thought it was a good movie.
It's one of those things where a lot of movie critics today grew up watching maybe a little more artsy movies, a little more like unknown indie movies. And this definitely fits that mold. And so I think this was such a cult classic with a lot of the critics when they were younger that, they're growing up and they're like, yeah, I'm reviewing this. I love this. Mad Max 1 had a 91%. This has a 95%. So the Mad Max critical darlings.
And we thought that 91% was very high because we both had pretty critical views on the first Mad Max. Yeah. We kind of came out of that saying like, that wasn't really that good. Or at least by today's standards, it was okay.
I remember liking Mad Max quite a bit, the first one. Mostly for what it did as far as like, not groundbreaking necessarily, but they definitely took a lot of risks in the film. I'll give you some points for taking some risks. It is a weird watch, but it's Mad Max.
Yeah, this one was way more entertaining.
With the audience score being an 86%, so rare audience lower than critics. Metacritic has this at a 7.7. The Metacritic audience has it at an 8.4, and the wild card of IMDb comes in at the lowest at 7.6. Yeah, it averages out to a mid-80s among critics and audience.
But what do we have to say, Nick? Please hit me with your laughable logline, followed by your popcorn points, and just give me your general thoughts on Mad Max 2, The Road Warrior.
Final review. Fight!
So I went ahead and I said for my logline, Mad Max returns to a world where gasoline is gold and marauders are out to get him and the settlers around him. I gave this a 7.1. So I said it was fun. I feel like I have to be consistent in my scores, right? I have my boxes that are checked.
As we say every week, we have to be consistent with our integrity.
Storyline and character development, I think, are huge in a film. There was a lot of action shots and fun. It was entertaining. I mean, if I had to give it an entertainment score, it's probably a 9. But as far as the movie goes, it didn't really feel like a movie. It just felt like a saga. Like, hey, here's just a thing that happened and we're going to show it to you. There's not a story. There's no big reveals. There's no big developments. There's just Max going out there, marauders chasing him being a badass. Nothing wrong with that. The acting was, I mean, not what you're here for. It was okay, right? There was no like huge. I was never looked at somebody who was like, "You're a terrible actor," because everybody's over the top and having a fun time. The costumes were definitely a little more post apocalyptic than number one. The costumes again. This is just a silly, fun, crazy, in your face film. I thought something that was funny was going back to the acting. For an hour and a half movie, this may have had 20 full pages of dialogue. Like there just wasn't a lot of dialogue. It was a lot of action shots, which was great. But they gave the fans what they wanted, and there's no need to mess with the formula that worked the first time, or the second time, or we'll see it in Thunderdome the third time. The only reason it got a 7.1 was because I gave Mad Max 1 a 7.2, and I liked it just one click underneath. I thought number 1, like I said before, took a little more risks, a little more chances, had a story, kind of told us who Max was. But yeah, so 7.1. But honestly, like as far as rewatchability, I'd rewatch this any day of the week.
I love it. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
My laughable logline for Mad Max 2, The Road Warrior is: a madman named Max kills, fights, and survives across a desert wasteland in search of gasoline. 7.7 popcorn points.
Very nice.
Being consistent, like we said. So this is actually my first repeat score. This is my first time I'm matching a score from a previous movie, and that would be the movie War Games.
Okay.
It's on par with War Games for very different reasons. War Games, I think, had a cute story. It had a good message. There's a lot of plot holes in that movie for me. That one did have a thicker plot. And what I appreciated about this movie was that it was such a simple plot. And I threw out the word before, calling this movie a vignette. It's the POV of the Pharaoh kid, and basically this is a retelling of a memory. And it plays off as not like a short story, but like you said, there's not a whole lot to it, but I liked that. You said there wasn't a whole lot of dialogue, but I liked that. I liked that there was a lot more blocking of shots, physical movements, signifying moves, like the guy on the motorcycle is like revving the engine and he starts driving back towards Max. Max just whips out the shotgun and the guy turns around. It's just like the story's being told with no words. I love that. This movie blew the first movie out of the water for me. The first movie had a technically buried underneath all that weirdness. There was a story there, but you really had to dig for it. This one just kind of leans on the vignette spectacle. It's action-packed. The editing was great. Immediately, like I said, the first scene, it just kills it with the action sequence. The editing, the cuts, and it looks so much better. The cinematography is better. The coloring is better. And we're going full bore with the goofiness. The first one, again, I said it kind of felt like I was laughing at the movie. This one, I'm in on the joke. I'm laughing with the movie. So essentially, this is what I've been waiting for. This is the pre-notion thoughts I've had of Mad Max in my head. When we watched the original, I was like, what the hell is this? This is so tame. The weird parts seemed like they were supposed to be taken seriously. But the sequel, though, cranks it up. Action, way better. Homoerotic stuff, super obvious. And if you're going to do that, just shove it in my face, because that's how I like it. Just tell me what you're about and say it loud, say it proud. Excellent car chase cuts. This is what I was expecting when I queued up Mad Max. And, I got a very simple story based in a bonkers world, and I found it enjoyable. So a pretty great execution of a grindhouse film.
It's wild what you can do when you 10x your budget. Like just looking from 1 to 2, you're just like, yeah, you could definitely afford to do all the things you did here. It's awesome.
That helps. You rated the original Mad Max higher than me. I rate the sequel higher than you. I like this little back and forth we have going. Mad Max, man, something about it. It's kind of draws us apart. Not by much, but just minimally.
Don't worry, we'll get to Thunderdome.
Well, I guess we'll see what Thunderdome is about. So a nice bag of microwave popcorn for me, and and also a microwave bag for you. I'm sorry. This is in
we're
the
same
sevens for us.
realm.
We're in the same realm. We're in the same realm. We're in the same ballpark here. But that will do it for us on the Just Play It podcast for the second installment of George Miller's fantastic Mr. Mad Max Fox franchise. Please tune in next week when we will be sticking with automobiles and sticking with the 1980s.
You won't want to miss it.
Head and gone. See you guys later. We'll see you down the road. Peace out.
Adios.